Hello, everybody, and welcome to our virtual happy hour. We're so excited to have you here and joining us in our USDA Southern family. We hope you have a drink. We will get started in just another minute or so. So here's your chance to hit the bar, mix your drink, get comfortable, get into a good seat like my car, and we'll see you in just another moment or two. We'll get going. And Sophia, I cannot see the question box, so if any questions are coming in, you'll just let us know if there's anything of importance or anything. Okay. Bonnie, I think people would appreciate seeing your drink again.
Oh yeah, Bonnie.
Here we go. Cheers, everybody.
Bonnie, what'd you make?
Well, this is in honor of our good buddy Rex Maynard. This is a screwdriver, a little light on the, you know what, heavy on the orange juice.
I heard Rex is famous for said screwdrivers. Is that right?
Absolutely. Got a message from Rex. I hope he's on. He wants you to talk. He wants you to talk long enough to have at least 3.
Drink fast, Rex. Drink fast.
Logging on, we're going to start in just another moment or so. This is our first ever Southern virtual happy hour. And most of you probably recognize our wonderful Southern president, Bonnie Vandergriff, out of Asheville, North Carolina. And also joining us today out of the great state of Montana is Nick McCarvel. Thank you so much, Nick, for being with us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for the chat and also for the drinks.
And I think most of you know me. My name is Andrew Feldman. I work as a staff person with the USDA Southern section here in Atlanta. Yes, I am officially in my car right now, having a little bit of internet trouble at home, so I drove over to our local Starbucks because that's how committed I am to being on this webinar with you all. So unfortunately, I do not have a drink with me here, although the Starbucks is open for drive-through, but I'm gonna make you all really jealous because I have something better than a drink.
He's hoarding.
My secret stash.
You better be careful, Feldman. You got to be careful in that parking lot, all right?
Right.
If it looks like I'm getting mugged for my toilet paper, just go ahead without me. Just keep going. So far, we've got over 50 people logged on from around the Southeast and our Southern states. I've been sharing with Nick, our guest, that our Southern section includes the 9 states of the Southeast. And we've got folks from as far west as Arkansas and Louisiana and Mississippi, all the way to the Carolina coasts and everything in between. We go up as far as Kentucky and all the way down to the Florida border. But just to clarify, Nick, Florida is not part of the Southern section. We don't count.
I did actually know that. I did know that.
And Nick, maybe you didn't know, we have a tiny little sliver of both Virginia and Texas. We have a little sliver of both those states that sort of crosses over the border. But for the most part, we're the 9 states. So to that end, I think we will go ahead and get going. I'm gonna close my webcam for just a second and ask Bonnie if you would like to share a few words and welcome everybody and just kick us off this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, and welcome everybody to our very first virtual happy hour. I just want to thank you all for taking the time to be with us. I certainly wish we could all be together so I could give you each a hug, but that's not allowed anymore. So this is our next best option. I hope you all are doing well. I know these are difficult times, so I just hope everyone's well and safe along with all of your families. And I hope everybody has their beverage because this is happy hour. So the first thing I want to do is propose a toast. And this toast is going to go to our staff, Andrew, Shelby, Sophia, and Rachel, for coming up with this great idea, first of all, and for making it all happen. So here's cheers to the great staff. Drink.
Oh, so nice.
And then I want to just take a moment to, before I turn it back over to Andrew and Nick, to thank you all for what you're doing for tennis, even though we can't play. Like I said, I know it's tough times and a lot of the committees are still working and the states and just trying to figure out the best course of action as we move forward through all of this. And I want you to know that the board will be working with the states to see the best way that we can help. So there's going to be a lot of needs out there. So the board will be, we have a call first of next week, and we'll be working on ways that we can help. So we'll be reaching out to the states for that. So at this time, I'm going to let's get started. So I'm going to turn it back over to Andrew and Nick. And thanks again, everybody, for being here.
Thank you, Bonnie, for your leadership. And as Bonnie mentioned, this has been a pretty big team effort and lots of folks helping out on the backside. Rachel McBurney in our office, Sophia, Shelby, Ron, Brooke. So we just wanted to try to do something kind of fun and low key. This is not a hard, serious afternoon happy hour. We just wanted to take advantage of Nick, ask him some easy and maybe some not so easy questions about his life as a pro tour journalist and broadcaster. And for those of you who don't know Nick, he's a writer, he's a journalist, he's a digital web developer. He puts content all over the place from the Grand Slams. He's worked at the Olympics. Besides tennis, he's into the figure skating world as well. And we might hit him up a little bit about the ice skating world. But Nick, I think what we thought we might start with. I think we have a couple of sort of housekeeping slides to go through here. So Rachel's going to advance the slides. We want certainly everyone to get comfortable, pull up a chair, maybe put on your PJs like Dimitrov, grab your cocktail of choice and just enjoy yourself. You can use the question feature on the web panel on your right side of your screen typically. There you go, Nick. It took a lot of practice. I had to practice a lot before I got that. But feel free to enter some questions. We're going to try to answer a bunch of those. We can't promise we'll get to all of them, but you are welcome to use the question panel to submit some questions to Nick. Yes, I am wearing a bow tie. Yes, I am in my car. Yes, I am at Starbucks using the Starbucks Wi-Fi. Let's get all that out of the way. All right, next slide, Rachel. And as I mentioned, this is our wonderful guest, Nick McCarvel. He has interviewed some of the top players in the world, including Mr. Roger Federer. And so we'll ask him a little bit about some of his experiences on the tour, some of his take on tennis. Nick, am I right that you grew up yourself playing tennis as a tennis player?
Yeah, Andrew, that's right. I'm actually back in Montana. I was at Indian Wells in the Palm Springs area to get the tournament ready. I work on the radio product to Indian Wells, and it was a decision either to fly back to New York, where I'm from, or where I live now, or come back here to Montana. So it felt a little better to be back in Montana. But yeah, I grew up with the public park system. Actually, I took summer lessons from the age of like 6. It's 2 blocks from where we grew up here in Montana, and my mom just sent me to the lessons that the city of Helena runs, I'm sure in some sort of conjunction with the USDA. And I grew up with public courts, and we have an old barnyard wall that is facing our alley. And so I spent thousands of hours hitting against the barnyard wall.
Nice. Well, we're so glad that you're a tennis player in addition to being a tennis journalist. And, we'll make you an honorary Southerner, at least for the purposes of this afternoon.
Well, I was telling Bonnie that I was actually meant to be getting on a flight tomorrow. I just got my notification to fly down to Charleston. This would have been my 8th Volvo Car Open with Bob Moran and Eleanor Adams, and obviously very sad not to be down literally in your guys' part of the world this next 10 days.
That's right. That's right. You've spent a lot of time down here in the southern section at that tournament. So, yeah. Well, I think for our first question that we were going to throw to you, we were also going to throw it out to the entire audience. So this is a bit of a participatory engagement, if you will. We've got 4 players on the screen, 4 of the sort of top men's players on the tour these days. Medvedev, who had a big showing at the US Open last year. Alexander Zverev, of course. Stefanos Tsitsipas from Greece, and Dominic Thiem out of Austria. And we thought we would ask our audience, and then maybe Nick, for you to comment on, which of these do you think might be the first to break through and win their Grand Slam? We know they've all made it really deep into the draws at various Grand Slams this last year. And so I believe everyone should be seeing a poll on their screen to select which of these 4 players would be the first to win a Grand Slam. So you can pick any one of these 4. Which one do you personally think will be the first to win a Grand Slam? And Rachel's going to monitor the poll taking there, and she'll let us know when we're ready to close that out and show the results. So Rachel, I'll leave that over to you.
All right, we're at 78% right now, so let's give it a couple of more seconds, give people a little bit of chance, more time to vote. We're at 82, 84. Let's close it down here in just a couple seconds, and we'll see what
I
we
love this. I love the interactivity. It's great.
Yeah,
All
we didn't
right,
want
guys.
me talking.
All right, I'm going to close it, and we'll see what we get.
All right,
All right.
there we go.
Pretty overwhelming there. Nick, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to say that first off, we've got some smart people on the call out there, because Dominic Thiem was the player that I was going to make the case for. And we were talking about this yesterday when we sort of did our practice for the call, is that you've got Zverev, Tsitsipas, and Medvedev, who are these up and coming players that I think we're really excited. They all play, we're excited about them. They play dynamic tennis. They move the ball around the court really well, but Dominic Thiem's just a little bit older than these other 3 guys, and so I think all of you will know that he's got those 2 French Open finals under his belt. You know, he's gone toe-to-toe with Rafa at the French Open. He's had some big wins outside of the majors. He's had some big wins now in the majors as well. I think for him, it's about putting together the right package. He was with Gunter Bresnik, who was his coach since he was 12 years old. And since then, he's been working with Nicolas Massou just in the last year, Andrew. So yeah, I'm gonna agree with the audience. If this was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I'll go with the audience. Dominic Thiem, final answer.
Super, great. Well, as you can see, we have a lot of really avid tennis fans who know their tennis players. The southern section, we're very proud of. Love every aspect, as players, as fans, as spectators, as coaches, as teaching pros. And so in every way, I think tennis is sort of ingrained in a lot of our DNA there. Yeah. Well, thanks. That was some good.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to follow up because just a follow-up question on that, on which American players we feel like might have a chance to win a slam in the next few years. Obviously, you guys know John Isner very well because of his roots in the South. I still think that he's a major threat. I mean, you look at what he did at Wimbledon a couple years ago. He's got a huge serve. I know that he's fallen off a little bit because of injuries in the last year, but Isner is a very good option. And then you look at these young players coming up in Opelka, in Fritz, in Tiafoe, in Tommy Paul. There, you know, these are all, a lot of these players have ties to the southern section. And so among the American guys, I think there's a big push right now, Andrew. There's that pack mentality that I think that we could see some of those guys get inside the top 20.
Nice. Well, and of course, that's something we're all very concerned about in an appropriate way. And we'd love to see some of the American guys get up there. You know, you've had the chance to meet a lot of these top players in your work, and you know, maybe talk to us about any of the interviews that you've done over the years with some of the top players, has anybody been particularly, surprising or entertaining that you've gotten to interview on court?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of different interviewing. So a lot of times I'll work with the majors on their digital platforms and on social media to help them with live streams, OTT products that you might find on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Instagram. So that's where a lot of my content lives. And then I also do a lot of, as Andrew was mentioning, on-court interviews. So post-match interviews, talking with players. You know what? I just love players with personality, and I think we all do, especially on the court. But when they bring that off of the court as well, or when they show that to us, I love players like Andrea Petkovic, who's a German player. She's very quirky. She used to have the Petco dance. There's, the top players have to do so much media that sometimes it can be a little bit watered down. But Roger Federer is a player that kind of always knows what you need in the moment. If you need something sort of quick for social, or if you need something insightful, if you're in a main press conference with him. I love talking to John Isner. He's very insightful. He always tells it like it is. Matty Keys is someone who's very conversational as well. And one of my favorite things about doing the on-court interviews, if you ever get a Bryan Brothers, or if you've ever been to a Bryan Brothers match and they win, which has happened quite often, they will, usually you'll do the sign 3 balls and hit them out to the crowd. Well, a lot of times the Bryan Brothers are going into boxes courtside, and they're grabbing practice balls. And a couple times in Miami, they, I think, sent out or hit out like 40 different balls into the crowd. So just like giving fans more access to the players, those are the people that I enjoy the most speaking with.
Yeah, very cool. Well, let's go over to the women's side and talk about that for a little bit. We, on the women's side, not just Americans, but there's several women players who, at this point in their career, have won their first Grand Slam and got that important #1 under their belt. But we thought we would ask the group and you to comment on, of these 4, and these 4 are Kenin, Ash Barty, Sloane Stevens, and Andreescu, who pretty recent winner with us. And of these 4, which of these 4 might we think is going to win their second Grand Slam first? Meaning, of these 4, which is the next to win their another Grand Slam? They've all won 1. So we've got the poll up on the screen. Rachel's going to tally the results for us as they come in, and we'll throw those back up on the screen for everybody to see. And then Nick, maybe we'll just ask you to give some insight here. But kind of nice
Sure.
that we've got a couple of Americans in the mix.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, Kenin, obviously, Andrew, that surprise win at the Australian Open, that was incredible. I was there in Melbourne for that. You look at Sloane Stevens, who hasn't had her best tennis recently, but she's one of the most talented players on tour. Ash Barty, one of the great all-courters. I think people are excited about the way that she plays tennis, the serve and volley, the backhand slice. And Andreescu, very athletic, made that roaring run last year, winning Indian Wells, Toronto, and then the US Open. But she's had a lot of trouble in her young career with injuries.
All right, guys, I'm going to shut down the poll and let's see what we get.
Let's see if I'm going to match up with the, oh, wow. This one's more even, Feldman.
Yep, a little more of a distribution. Looks like a lot of fans of Kenin.
Well, so I was going to pick Bianca Andreescu. I'll give my reasoning as to why, but this graph actually, I can tell all of you who are a part of this today, you know your tennis really well, because there's such a spread among the women right now and where the top talent lies. And so Sofia Kenin, I think, is a great choice. She's confident. She plays an all-court game. Her dad has built a great sort of foundation for her tennis to live off of. She won the Australian Open because she was fearless. That's what won her that title in Melbourne. I just think, for me, Andreescu, she hates to lose so much. It actually reminds me of Serena. So for me, I'm going to go with the 23% that said Bianca Andreescu.
Oh, interesting. And I know probably a lot of our fans, including me, would love to see Sloane sort of rise up again and really enter those top ranks. She had that just amazing U.S. Open win a couple years ago, which was so thrilling. What do you think? Do you think we might see Sloane sort of rise up again?
We certainly could. I mean, I think all of you watching will remember that Sloane kind of came out of nowhere to win the 2017 US Open because she had been injured for much of that year. She was in Charleston with us working for the Tennis Channel, and she had that like crutch wheel setup where she was like barely able to get around. So I think there's a lot of different aspects when you get to the top of the women's game. I don't know personally. I think maybe Sloane's just kind of lost that path a little bit, but I'm really confident that she's going to come back and show us some of her best tennis for sure.
That was a very politic answer, but I'm gonna let you get away with it.
Thanks.
So as you mentioned, Nick, you've done a lot of traveling. You've been at the Australian Open, several of the major world tournaments, both in the United States and globally. You know, something that's really important to us here in the South is food and eating. And we thought we might ask you to comment on, can you think of kind of the best food experience you've had at any of the majors?
Well, there's no food like the food that I eat at the Volvo Car Open every year in Charleston. So I'm very, no, seriously, it is like my favorite because what we get so in Charleston, I write the daily program. I help kind of oversee our social media team. And then I'm also the court announcer on the Althea Gibson Club Court, which is one of my favorite tennis courts in the world. But Andrew, the eating is so good in Charleston, even at the tournament site. So, and that's just not me, you know, paying my Southern dues. You know, it's all the tournaments have done such a good job from the small events with the food trucks and local fare and getting people the cuisine that they want to eat at a music festival or at some sort of summer sports outing. And I think a lot of you will know this from being at events and running your own events, is the Grand Slams have done that too. You know, you go to the Australian Open and they have the 4 different quarters of French, British, American, and Australian food, which is really fun. The best eating at the majors, I'm actually gonna have to say it's the US Open. They've done a fantastic job at getting good work, at getting local New York food. I live in Harlem. There's a local Harlem restaurant that is at the US Open. And so the eating is very good there. I do have to say the media bar, the media salad bar at the Australian Open is a close second place.
Well, and you mentioned too, obviously you have a bit of a different experience when you go to these events and the Grand Slams and the tournaments as a member of the media. So you get some backstage media access. If you and again, without making it a plug for the US Open, where do you think the media gets treated really well in particular from your experience?
Well, the US Open does it well because they have a 5 o'clock happy hour for us in the media, as does the Australian Open does that as well. You know, it's interesting because I think in a lot of ways the tennis media has kind of matched societal media where you have fewer outlets. The access isn't as good maybe as it used to be in the 70s and 80s. So I think that's changed things as well. I love, like, just left Indian Wells. The main media center overlooks center court. We're in Stadium 1, which is fantastic as a member of the media. I mentioned that salad bar at the Australian Open. There's nothing like it. But I would say sort of from a journalistic perspective, you know, access to players, getting around pretty easily. The Australian Open moved their media center to be a bit away from Rod Laver Arena, so that's been a little bit tough. But I don't think we get mistreated anywhere. I think that there's just like you talk to members of the media and some of them love some places more than others. So it kind of just depends where you like the most. I love going to Australia in January. Like there's nothing better, especially leaving New York winter. But then to go to Wimbledon and to have that experience, I'm sure a lot of you have been to Wimbledon yourselves. There's just nothing like it. And obviously we're heavy hearts today because that event is well and truly canceled for this year. But I pinch myself every year going to Wimbledon and feeling like I'm a part of what I watch Breakfast at Wimbledon with Bob Costas and Bud Collins every morning in Montana. And now to go there, this would have been my 8th Wimbledon. To do that's a dream come true.
Amazing. And I'm not going to ask you to reveal your age, but I think when people hear you talking about being in Charleston and Wimbledon for 8 years going, they're thinking you must have started like when you were in high school or anything. So, but you mentioned Wimbledon, and let's talk about that for a second, because as you said, we did get the confirmation yesterday about that, and that is sad news for us all, and obviously a tough decision on the part of the tournament. In relation to your buddy Raj there that you mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people were thinking, wow, he's really, they've been asking him for a number of years now, are you at the end of your career? Do you think you can still play with the best? And he's obviously been still able to show that he can hang with those youngins. But, given that it's now going to be another year before Wimbledon 2021, you want to give us a little of your take on what you think about that and how that might relate to what Roger can accomplish. I know a lot of people are watching to see if he'll get another Grand Slam, and will Rafa or Novak catch up to him or pass him in the numbers. They're also tight relatively to each other, right behind Serena, of course, in terms of current numbers. But you want to tell us a little about your perspective on Roger and what's happened with Wimbledon?
Yeah, I mean, the Wimbledon news, I think from inside tennis, and I'm sure a lot of you watching at home will feel the same, like it kind of felt inevitable that we didn't get Wimbledon this year. It's hugely disappointing. And if you read the All England statement, the All England club statement, it's really interesting just to hear from the club. And they didn't want to play it without fans. And even with fans, they'd need a few thousand people on site to make the event operational itself. So yeah, that's hugely disappointing, first off. I'm gonna guess a lot of you are big Federer fans out there, and this isn't lip service. I actually think that this break could be a really good thing for Roger, because he had that little bit of an injury that he stepped away from tour a few weeks ago, and he's basically been gone since the Australian Open, and he was planning to come back for the grass season. We won't see him on the grass itself, but I think the rest and recuperation and just overall help with his body and the mind. I don't know if some of you saw Federer was on Instagram hitting against the wall in snowy Switzerland yesterday, which was great. Andrew, I really mean it. I think that if he can overall, I think the back has been the big issue. We saw it at the US Open last year against Dimitrov. We saw it at the Australian Open again. The back just hasn't been able to hold up for 2 weeks of tennis. That's why Wimbledon, a lot of people felt like last year in those championship points, and maybe this year where he'd have a big chance again. But I'm telling you, if he's able to rest and recuperate, if they can get that right, he's got a great trainer that he's worked with forever. I really don't see a reason until he gives us one to think that he's not going to be going deep at the majors.
Yeah, super. Wow. I'm gonna take some interviewer privilege for a second and answer a personal text that I got. Yes, everybody, this is my Corona beard. I know lots of you are not used to seeing me with all this facial hair, kind of getting ready for my maybe a possible Santa gig as Santa Claus later in the year. But once we get back on the court and everything's up and going, that's probably not gonna stay around. But just want to make sure I answer that. Paula Hale out in North Carolina. I know you're concerned. So
amazing.
Well, we're talking about the Grand Slams and talking about the grass court, and that's actually probably a good lead into our next question. And this was another one we thought we might ask the whole audience as well as you to comment on in terms of, the difference between grass and clay and a hard court. Which one really is kind of considered the biggest accomplishment? And this is obviously not an objective answer for anybody. but I think Rachel is going to launch a poll to ask folks what they think is the best accomplishment. There's the poll right there. So we'll give people a minute to answer that. And what do you think, everybody? Do you think the grass, which is obviously referencing Wimbledon, the clay of Roland Garros, or the hard courts of Australia or the US Open is the biggest accomplishment in a Grand Slam victory? So Rachel, I'm going to give it to you to let us know when we're ready to open up the results and share that with everybody.
All right, let's give it a couple more seconds. We're at 80%, so we got a few more people waiting to vote.
like this.
So
Feldman, I'm still surprised, Feldman, that no one's come and tried to steal your toilet paper from your back seat. And this might be a good time to mention too that if Sophia's got any, guest questions, that we're happy to take those as we go too, right?
That's right. Yes. Feel free on the right side of your panel if you want to enter any questions for Nick or me. Hopefully I've answered questions about my beard. Well, there we go. I don't know. What do you think, Nick? Is that a surprise? Are you surprised to see what our audience feels is the most challenging accomplishment for a Grand Slam?
This is actually, I'm pretty surprised, and I would love for Sophia if we get a few people to tell me why they think grass is the toughest, because at least on tour, from what I gather as a reporter and a journalist, is that it's actually Roland Garros is the toughest surface to win on because of the way you have to grind through 2 weeks and the Parisian weather, and if you're in the men's draw, you have to play at some point Rafael Nadal. So I'd be interested to know why a few people think grass would be, which is the toughest surface. I think maybe just because, Andrew, they don't play on grass that much, that maybe people feel like you only have those 3 weeks ready for Wimbledon, which that would be an interesting point to talk about. I do think that the US Open is quote unquote harder to win than the Australian Open, and that's no knock on the AO, but because of the end of the season and where the US Open sits, I think that's tougher. I am seeing from James that, so less time to prepare on grass. That makes sense to me. My vote would be with you clay folks. And then this just came through too, with the rescheduling of the French Open, presumably cooler weather. Okay, so the French Open is meant to be in late September this year, and Andrew, we don't know if that's actually going to happen. We obviously have to see that come to fruition in the next few months, obviously. But it is, to me, it's going to be a whole different tournament than if it was, held in its usual time, late May. Let's watch this space on the French Open. How's that?
Yeah. I think that's probably a lot of what we're doing with a lot of tennis right now, right? We're kind of in a little bit of a wait and see, which is challenging for us because a lot of us want to get both ourselves back out on the court ourselves, and we also really are hungry to see our favorite top players and all their amazing shots.
And I think that this, not only if you're a club player, I know a lot of you play, I play every now and then. I think that this time away from the sport is going to be interesting for those of us that play recreationally, but also on the pro tour, because it's going to favor the players that are more mentally tough. So if you are able to withstand not being on a court for a few months and you're hitting against your wall and you're doing push-ups at home because you don't have a home gym, those are, I really think that we're going to see some interesting results, whether it be from the US Open series or this fall or whenever we start up again. It's going to be those mentally tough players that have the advantage.
Nick, we were talking here in the Southern section about, so with the latest timing from the ATP and WTA about tournaments basically being out through early July, one of the very first pro tournaments that, if we stay on track, will be right here in Atlanta at the Atlanta Open, a men's ATP event that John Isner, as you mentioned earlier, has won several times in his career. And that's been a really nice event for us here in Atlanta and the Southeast. And again, if the schedule remains as is, that may be one of the very first pro events to happen this summer. And we're thinking that's possibly going to make the Atlanta Open that much more popular a stop for some of the even higher tier players, and certainly a lot of interest in the audience and the public in getting out to see pro tennis happen again. So by no means are we excited about this long delay, but we're certainly excited to see the possibilities of how that might turn out for the Atlanta Open here this summer.
Totally. I think all of us are looking forward to that day when we can start to creep back to something we recognize as everyday life. And I think that tennis events are going to feel that too. I think that Atlanta has a huge opportunity as an ATP 250 to show what a great event is. I've never been to it personally, but I know that they do an exceptional job working in tandem with a lot of you. And these are, these small events, I think that they've actually got shortchanged a little bit, Andrew, in the last few years, because the slams have kind of grown in importance and money and popularity. And
Yep.
these, we say smaller events, that's only due to prize money and ranking points. They're community events. The exceptionalism that they're put on with is incredible. And a lot of the players, I think, really love coming to communities like Charleston and Winston-Salem and Atlanta to really feel like they're part of something. And it would be awesome, yeah, if we could kind of kick things back up down south.
Well, consider yourself open invitation to the Atlanta Open. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you as a guest. We'd love to have you do some stuff with our Kids Day and some other events. So I'll just sort of put that out there on behalf of Southern Section. We probably want to make sure we ask perhaps the most important question of the day, not just for you, but for everybody else out there. And I think that's our next slide and poll question. And so that is, have you watched Tiger King? And talking about Tiger King, you can't not know about Tiger King. I've been in touch with some of the staff from the USTA Tennessee office, who apparently that's how they're spending all their work from home time, is watching Tiger King. You know who you are. But we thought we'd ask out the whole audience if they have indeed been watching Tiger King.
Poll? Are we doing a poll for this? I love this.
I think we. Oh, there we go. There's our poll. Kind of an easy poll, everybody. It's yes or no. Have you watched Tiger King?
Okay, so Feldman, as people vote for that, we just had a couple more things from Sophia. Scott Laxo wants to know which Starbucks you're at because he has his eye on your supplies.
Well, Scott, I'm not that far away from you, so I'm going to keep it anonymous.
And then while we keep this open, there was a question that came through on who's the best tennis journalist, print or television in history. And actually, I think some of you may be watching Tennis Channel Live. They're doing every day at noon to 3, they're doing a live broadcast on Tennis Channel. And today, Feldman, they did a whole look back on Bud Collins, who I think I would be insane not to say that Bud Collins is sort of the cream of the crop for me. And a role model for me coming up in tennis has been John Wertheim, Chris Clary, Doug Robson, Courtney Nguyen, Cindy Schmirler. There's a big community of us within the pro tennis ranks in journalism, and it's a nice family to be a part of.
So, fun fact about John Wertheim, and you probably know that for many years on his Sports Illustrated column, he has done kind of a post US Open top 50 things about the US Open. I don't remember that. And one year, many years ago, I was in it, not by name, but I had led a cheer of the lower stadium in Ash. If you love Santoro, Fabrice Santoro, clap your hands. You know that. And he must have been there and caught it, and he wrote that up as one of the top 50 things about the US Open that year, and I was very, very proud of myself.
I hope you have that framed on your wall.
All right, Rachel, how are we doing with our poll?
Here we go. I think it should be sharing. Do you all see it?
No, we can't.
All right, give it a second. Is it there now? There we go.
Yep, we got it. So about 75% of you have not watched the Tiger King. Wow. All right. So the big reveal, Nick, are you the Tiger King fan or not?
I've actually gotten in trouble on a couple text chains with my friends because I'm with the majority of you. I have not seen it yet, but it is on my list. If you don't know what it is a Netflix documentary. Well, maybe Feldman, you want to describe exactly what it is, but is the hot show right now.
Yep. So Rachel, do you want to close that poll? Or I guess take that off the screen. There we go. Well, I don't want to be a commercial for Netflix or anything. I will, and it's a short 7-episode series. Kim Wilson and Tyler out of the Tennessee office have turned me on to it. If you want to see something that is bizarre and wacko and distracting and escapist from our current situation, Tiger King is your go-to show. That may be the best way I can describe it.
So you've watched it, I'm gathering.
Well, I've actually only watched one episode. I'm kind of pacing myself. I want to save them a little bit. So I know there's a lot to come in the additional episodes, but yeah, I've watched one.
So I have gotten into Designated Survivor, which is Kiefer Sutherland. It's on Netflix. I think it was originally maybe on Stars or something like that. But what's been your go-to? I think everyone's. What are you guys streaming? What's been your go-to watch?
You know, I had not finished Orange is the New Black, and I love that series. I thought it was just so fascinating, and I had never seen the final season, so I've been making my way through that, and I'm also pacing that because I just don't want to get through it too quickly. I'm not a big TV watcher, in all honesty. It's just not my thing. So I don't watch a lot of stuff either live or on online. Yeah.
And you know what was really cool is last weekend, ESPN, maybe some of you caught it on ESPN too. They did a Serena, 12 hours of Serena, and then they did 22 hours of Roger versus Rafa, which is awesome. And then I know that Tennis Channel is airing, I think starting next week, a whole throwback of French Open and Wimbledon and the US Open and just some really great tennis content if you need your tennis fix from the internet.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's go back to tennis. That was a bit of a vanity question there on the Tiger King. We know I mentioned earlier, Nick, that you, besides covering the pro tennis world, you also cover figure skating and the pro and Olympic figure skaters who are themselves amazing athletes, incredible strength and versatility. And we know that you've spent time interacting with figure skaters and ice skaters. And so we thought we'd ask you, if you were to sort of distinguish who might it be easier for to take up the other sport. So would it be easier, you think, for a figure skater to take up tennis, or would it be easier for a tennis player to take up figure skating? These are the kind of things our viewers want to know.
I love this. Well, so I've covered 4 Olympics, 2 of them being Winter Games. I was in Sochi for NBC as a writer, and then in Pyeongchang just a couple years ago for NBC. I was a video interviewer, so I talked to a lot of the skaters after they performed on the ice, after they competed. This one to me, if you put it in those terms, figure skating is so freaking hard. I don't know if we have any skaters among our tennis community here today, but I've only skated a few times in my life, and I consider myself an athletic individual. We grew up in my family playing a lot of sports. Figure skating is really hard. So I think I'm going to give the skaters the edge here. I think they could pick up tennis, not saying tennis is easy. They could pick it up a little bit better, Feldman, but I also will say is some people might know the name Barbara Strycova, who's a player from the Czech Republic. She's one of the #1 doubles players in the world right now with Shea Su Wei. Barbara Strycova was a very, very good figure skater, and I think around 13 she had to pick if she was going to continue competitive skating in Czech Republic or become a tennis player, and
Yeah.
she became a tennis player.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you for that insight. Let's stay with winter sports because we know that you grew up in the northern state and that you're currently in Montana. And I think you told me the other day it's like about 10 degrees more or less down there, up there.
Today it's 25 today. It's a little warmer.
Oh, it's balmy, balmy. So I think you had mentioned on your YouTube broadcast, and we're going to share that link with everyone a little later, that you yourself had been doing a little bit of snowshoeing. And we know, for those of you who don't know, snowshoeing can be a very good cardio workout. It's a really strenuous activity. We are very proud of tennis, Nick, as you probably have heard me say now a couple times. But in particular, we're also proud that tennis is a very healthy sport for our bodies. It's very heart healthy. It's an activity that the whole family can do. It's a lifelong sport. But in terms of health benefits, we're very proud of that with tennis. So we thought we'd ask you to comment on, between snowshoeing and tennis, what are your thoughts on terms of benefits to your body and benefits to your health?
Okay, so here's me. This is a couple weeks ago. We went snowshoeing. It was beautiful. I went with a cousin and just a snowy day in Montana. And we went actually out on a golf course, one of the public courses, and you just go. You know, we grew up skiing, so skiing was big for my family. There's a few ski hills that are close here to where I grew up in Helena. But you know, like I think I'm like most of you on this call. Like tennis is my sport. My uncle played it. My grandpa played it. I play it. My little nephew, he's 8 years old. We're getting him into tennis. I don't think there's any workout like it. And I know that we've gone through different iterations with quick starts and net generation and cardio tennis, but I still think the stop and start, the flexibility, the mind piece of it, there's nothing like tennis. This cartoon, I was telling Sophia and Rachel yesterday, it's cracking me up because, and Shelby, because it's an amazing cartoon. I love that. I did not snowshoe with tennis rackets on my feet, but snowshoeing's really hard. I'd be curious to know how many people have done it before. You strap those things on and then you've got to get, it's like high knees the whole way you're going. And I was, you know, it was like 15 degrees and I'm just like drenched in sweat the whole time.
I mean, I grew up in the Northeast, so I've done downhill skiing, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, ice skating. I love all those outdoor winter sports. And so, yeah, I can attest to that. You can really work up a sweat in some of those in particular. And, you know, for yourself, obviously you grew up playing tennis, as you mentioned. You've been a skier. Other sports and activities that you did growing up, what was that like for you and your background?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm one of six. I'm the fifth kid out of six. My sister is just here with her kids, but we're doing a little house sharing during the quarantine time. We played sports. So my parents they're lifelong Montanans, and it's just get outside and get active. And I know that that's a message for a lot of people on this call too, but tennis was big for me. I played that with my brothers. My dad was a good tennis player. Soccer, basketball. My sister was a really good hurdler, so she was in track and field. But with six kids, my parents were like, put us in Y soccer and basketball and just get us out of the house and get us active.
Nice, nice. And I'm going to give you, Nick, the heads up that we're getting into the final few questions and also the final few minutes on my laptop. So in case I disappear completely, Rachel and Sophia are ready to fill in, and Sophia will be a wonderful stand-in in case I disappear suddenly into the Twitter sphere there. But we thought we'd ask you. I mentioned you have a YouTube channel, and I know you're an active Facebooker and Twitterer yourself. You know, a lot of the players have really stepped up their game, no pun intended, these last couple of years online, on Twitter, on Instagram. Who would you recommend that we follow and look for online in terms of a few pro players that you think have a particularly good deal?
Sure. I mean, right now, Stan Wawrinka is always good on social media. Right now, I think he's maybe feeling a little bit house stir crazy. So especially on Instagram, if any of you have Instagram, follow Stan Wawrinka. Christy Feldman, who had that great run at the US Open last year, she's an American player. I think she's from New Jersey, but she went to Stanford. decided to go pro and had a great run at the US Open last year. She's top 100. She's been making a lot of these videos on TikTok. And if you have kids, you're probably going to know what TikTok is, but it's basically a video service where you record yourself with music. And Christiane has been doing a lot of like, she's been doing like commentary on the life as a tennis pro. So she's kind of been making fun of herself through her TikTok videos, and you can find a lot of those on Twitter. So right now I'd say Stan and Christiane are doing a good job. Serena's always a good follow on social media. I love Serena on social. You know, the players are so good with it now. They're accessible. Earlier, I saw Alexander Zverev was doing an Instagram Live. A lot of the players connecting with fans like that. If you have a favorite player out there and you want to get connected with them on social media, you're going to find out more about them and hopefully have some fun along the way. Uh-oh, Feldman, are you muted? We lost your audio. Don't let anyone have the toilet paper, Andrew. Don't let anyone have the toilet paper.
All right, let's see. I think he may have dropped off possibly. I'm not positive.
He's still hanging out.
All right, so just to be safe. So, all right. Well, on that, let's see. So with social media, it's good to know with Stan. I did actually get a hoot or a crack out of his post with the bear. So I do agree on him being a little bit stir crazy. So I guess on that, what's kind of your favorite question to ask pro players whenever you're interviewing them? And who, I guess on that as well, who would you say has answered it best with your favorite question?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, so I think what we're trying to do within tennis is always to try to bring more people to the sport. And I try to do that with my line of questioning. So I like to be really researched and figure out exactly some different angles to go at players with and feel as though I'm accessing them from a different way and bringing out some of their personality. And it's funny, like you can get a player on a great day and they'll give you good content and you'll feel fantastic, and then you get the same player the next day and it doesn't go as well. It just depends. They're humans like us. They have good days, they have bad days. I think a lot of you on this call know that. I always love the question, like if you weren't a tennis player, what would you be doing? Because it gives you good insight into the players' minds otherwise. And I will never stop laughing that Julia Gerges, who is a German player, she's been deep at the slams, top 10. She has said that she'd like to be an accountant if she wasn't a tennis player. And no offense to any of those of you on the call that are accountants, but not the sexiest of jobs. And I love that Julia Gerges says that she'd like to be an accountant.
Huh. That's interesting. Okay. All right. Well, okay, let's see. And then I think we've got one more. So, all right. So, kind of to top it all off here, if we can kind of get what your perspective is on how to increase the profile of tennis in America. So I know that it's kind of a big whammy to end everything with, but what are your thoughts on that one, Nick?
Yeah, well, as we wrap up and maybe people will start to drop off, I just want to take a minute and say a huge thanks to Bonnie, Andrew, and to the whole team here for having me today, obviously, and all of you to be a part of this. We are going to get through what we're going through each day in this country, and I think that we don't know how long the road is, but it's been nice to have this community feel today. I would say for me overall, you know, tennis right now in the United States has seen great growth. I know that you feel that within the Southern section. And I think it's going to be about continuing to engage the young audience. getting kids in public schools to getting tennis rackets in their hands. I know Net Generation, Leah Friedman's a friend of mine who's done great work on that front. Kids involved, you know, pro events, small level events, college tennis, high school tennis, leaders within the community. I know that's what a lot of you guys do day in and day out in your jobs and in the southern section. And I also think, I don't think that we can deny that stars help grow the game. Venus and Serena, look at all of the young African American women who have come up and have said that Venus and Serena are their heroes. Sloane, Maddie, Taylor Townsend, so many of them. And I think if we can bring up those next stars into the top tier, someone asked about the next great man in American tennis, we need that. John Isner's been fantastic. He's carried the torch really well. He continues to do that. But I think if some of these young guys can step into that role, that'll be big. Yeah, that's my best political answer as possible. How'd I do, Bonnie?
You did great. So was that the last question, Sophia?
It is, yes. And then obviously we've got, if anybody with, you know, for social media, we've obviously got Nick's Instagram and no, definitely. And what you were mentioning earlier on in the webinar, or not webinar, our virtual happy hour. Sorry, I've been in webinar mode. So, but if anybody wants to follow his Tennis Tuesday on YouTube, definitely, you know, check it out, subscribe. And right now, if y'all want to check out the question box right over there, and if you have any suggestions for guests or ideas for future Southern virtual happy hours, please feel free to drop them in the question box. All right, we're going to leave that open for a little bit longer. Okay.
Yeah, and just cheers to that. And again, thanks so much for having me, Bonnie. I'll let you close it out. But again, this is best wishes to everyone out there, and also kudos on all the work that you're doing. Tennis is a grassroots, a community-driven sport. I feel that in Montana and New York City and down south when I'm there. So well done on the work that the Southern section is doing.
Nick, thank you so much for being here. So everybody, cheers to Nick.
Cheers, thank you.
Drink. We really appreciate it. This was very informative, and I imagine we'll send out a little survey to see if you guys would like to do more of these. We want to keep Sophia and Andrew busy while they're in quarantine. So anyway, I hope you all, cheers to all of you. Thank you for what you're doing. Nick, like Andrew said, you're welcome in the Southern section anytime. Love to have you and show you some Southern hospitality. So hope everybody has a safe evening. Stay well, stay positive, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again. Good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.